Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending upon where you are. This is our Freelance Friday, and we're coming to you today from Cordoba, Mexico. Looking forward to getting into what we're going to talk about today, which is basically a lot of people I've noticed over the years when they come to freelancing, they look at it like, okay, that's something that I've got to do. That's another way to earn money. And I probably have to do that same boring stuff I was doing in my work to make a little money. And the interesting thing about freelancing and some of the networks that we teach you how to work on is that there's lots of jobs beyond just maybe the stuff that you might classify as boring that you did for work. And we're going to run through some of those today, and we're going to talk about strategies for thinking about those and making a list of fun kind of freelance jobs that you want to do. Now, some of these may not be big earning jobs, but I kind of liken it to going into the gym after you haven't exercised for a while. It's a great way to sort of work with your joints and your muscles a little bit without overstressing them. And so when somebody is freelancing and they're doing sort of what they knew how to do in their career and they're making good money doing that as a freelancer, sometimes it's fun just to go in and do fun jobs, do jobs that are interesting to you in a field that you have an interest in and that sort of thing. And that's going to bring up kind of our first thing that we look for. We're looking for, maybe hobbies that you have. And, hobbies are interesting. A lot of hobbies went from being whatever they were to just being the computer, because for many of us over the last 30 years, the computer and even the television and streaming videos and all that kind of stuff became more and more of what our hobbies were all about. But there are hobbies, certainly, like cooking, painting, photography, exercise is a hobby for some, runners, that kind of thing. Gardening might be another thing, to consider. Writing, some people enjoy reading. I mean, both of those things are, we do writing and reading every day in what our work is. But I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they were telling me that for them, reading a book was the highest form of relaxation. Seeing words on a page, turning the pages. They knew, that's how they sent the message to their mind and their body that we're relaxing, we're unplugging, we're, doing this stuff. And Bob, good to see you here from Roatan. And photography, yes. Interesting. You and I share that hobby. When I was 9 years old, I built a dark room with my father's help, who had already done that kind of thing in a decade earlier, before I was born. And so it's amazing how these hobbies creep into our lives, and they become more and less active. And there was a time up till maybe I was 22, 23 years old where photography played a big role in my life. And then I got into it even professionally at a point. And then I went on to do it, just sort of having a family, taking snapshots at Christmas and birthday parties and those kinds of things. And it kind of went dormant as a hobby, where I was really excited about lenses and gears and being able to photograph certain things at high speed or low speed or whatever it might be. But all that came roaring back at about age 50, when I started traveling a little bit, started living abroad. There were so many things that I wanted to capture. And at that time, the iPhone just wasn't quite there. Today, I use my iPhone as much as any camera I use. And but it's just a great hobby. And there's an insatiable demand for photography of one kind or another. So this is one of the areas that you can always look for. And so I know some of you are thinking, how do I find these jobs that are that kind of fun, that really kind of get me interested? And the answer is you go into these networks like Upwork or Freelancer or Fiverr, and you can just type what you're interested, the kind of work you're interested in doing. You just type in photography. And if you're an avid bird photographer, you might type in bird photography. And sure enough, you'll find some number of jobs that are focused on that. Now, it may not actually be doing the photography, but it might be doing the processing of the photography, because even though we don't have film in the conventional sense these days, we do have digital images. And when those are taken, and in fact, every magazine cover you see, and many of the photographs on websites you see are all photographs that have been color corrected, cropped. The image has been improved by adjusting various parameters. And there's a pretty big business in correcting photography. In fact, I knew a guy that worked in New York for a period of time and was in the fashion industry. And he got to be very good at color correcting and cropping photographs and that sort of thing. And he moved to a different part of the country, but he continued to do that kind of work because basically a photographer makes money when they're shooting pictures. That's where they make the most money. And they don't make as much money when they're cropping and color correcting and adjusting the contrast and that kind of thing. And he learned how to use several programs that help him do that. And that's what he did. That's how he learned online. So he was spending his day doing things that he enjoyed doing, learning lots as well about how to use that software and get the best possible image that he was able to pull back into his stuff. But your hobby could be quilting. It could be gardening. And if you just type in those words into these networks, you're just going to see a ton of information coming up. You might see half a dozen jobs. You might see 24, you might see 200. It just varies on the day. Of course, not all of those jobs are going to be a perfect fit for you. Some of them might be, let's say you put in quilting. Some of them might be build a website for a quilting company or design a logo for a quilting company. Well, those aren't the ones you're going to do, but there might be some in there. We like to say shoot for 10 to 20% of the jobs that come up are ones that you can do. And it's funny, there are many people that want to work on these networks that have not come from a business background. And let's say they put in a search word and it comes up with 100 hits. That means there's 100 jobs that have the word quilting in them. Now, what would you think would be the number of those jobs for this to be exciting, interesting, a productive way to earn money? If out of those 100 jobs, how many of those jobs would have to be in the ballpark of the kind of thing that you could do and you would want to do? What number? Be interested in a number. There's let's see, looking for a number. And so what I hear a lot of times is people say, oh, I would expect half of them to be, worthwhile or that sort of thing. That's way too much. It's in violation of what's called the Pareto principle. And this is, you can look that up, Pareto principle, and you'll see all kinds of good stuff out there that will explain it. But usually if you can get 10% or 20% of those jobs that are a good fit for you, that's an out of the park home run. That's a very good percentage. And I like to use the analogy, it's like using a pan for gold. You don't usually get your pan down there by the side of the creek and take a big hunk of mud and slop it in the middle and start picking out gold nuggets. No, you have to go through a laborious process of kind of swishing water around and swishing the dirt and the smaller rocks out until you get down, because the gold is a heavier item. It's a heavy metal, and it just sinks to the bottom there. And that's what you see, and you see a few flecks. So it's kind of like that. You're looking for the flecks of gold to give you that. But once you figure out your search terms and you know what you're looking for, this process becomes much faster. And so the second thing I'd like you to think about in terms of your interest, and your interest are, could be a hobby, I guess, but interest in my mind fall more into the category like you've been interested in something like aviation all your life, or archaeology, or something like that. It wasn't something you did as part of your job. It wasn't really necessarily a hobby you pursue, but you've always enjoyed studying history, going to museums. These are the kind of things that I put in the category of interest. And I was talking to one of our members recently, and they put in for their keyword to search for these fun jobs, they put in the word museums, and they came up with all kinds of things to do, different assignments. Some of them were proofreading, some of them were making PowerPoints, some of them were being interviewed as a client coming in, or a customer or a visitor to a museum, and you looked at certain things around a new exhibit they were developing, and would tell the person that posted the job what you liked about the exhibit and what you didn't like about the exhibit. So a lot of organizations use these systems to do market testing. And so a lot of times they're looking for, males or females, depending upon what they're talking about. If they want you to evaluate some sort of sports product, they might say, I'd like you to watch a 2-minute video on this new sports product for men, and I'd like you to answer 10 questions in a survey. And this is the kind of stuff you can do in 15 minutes. And a lot of times these surveys are paying $15, $20, $25 once you complete them. So those are examples of some of the kind of fun stuff that you can weave into the work that you do. Other areas of interest might be, let's say you go antiquing. I mean, you don't do it every day of the week. You're not, but you might do it on vacations. You might do it once or twice a year. You might go to a few websites for the favorite kind of antiques that you have. And so that's yet another thing that creates your interest. It draws you into the websites. Another example is, do you play a musical instrument? A lot of people have interest, they have a lifelong experience with playing a musical instrument. They are excited about that instrument. They're excited about the variations of the instrument. I guess one of the things I've become fascinated with is electric guitars. During the pandemic, out of sheer boredom, I wound up watching a whole bunch of videos on electric guitars, and I had no idea that there were as many different guitars that could create as many different sounds as they could, and all the variations to get those sounds. So music might be an area that would be interesting for you. And then we have a feature on our Tuesday night call that we call the Hilarious Job of the Week. And what we do is we ask our members, who are out there searching all the time for jobs in their field, but also, do they see a job that's funny for some reason? And an example of, and I call this third category sort of the random category. So it's everything else, but some of the random hilarious jobs in the week. I remember seeing one that was all about writing a humorous speech for a best man. So they weren't looking for a professional writer or anything like that. I think the job paid $100 or a few $100. So it'd be the kind of thing you might spend an hour or so doing. But if you have a knack for writing in a humorous way, this is a great kind of job to break up your what you're looking at, how you do things, just to change the energy around the kind of work that you're doing and bring you in a new direction. It might be that you begin to write more about that topic. And Bob mentions that travel and exploration of new countries and cities around the world is, yes, a fascinating topic. Bob and I are fellow travelers in that regard. We both traveled around the world, seen lots of interesting things. And all I can say is mind blown, but you get, odd knowledge. Sometimes you might see an assignment to, I want to talk to somebody that recently has been to Thailand, and what were your first impressions? They want to interview you and get your first impressions. They're not asking you to write an article. They're probably writing an article or making a video, and they want to get information that they can weave into that article or video. So asking you, what you do when you get there. What was the most interesting thing? What was the least interesting thing? There's just an endless path to go down for that information as you travel. And the great thing about traveling around the world and seeing a lot of places for the first time, or, I've been to places like London probably a dozen times in my life. And every time I go there, there's some whole complete new understanding of the historical aspects of London, because they're continuously unearthing things, and people are dying and their libraries get donated to public organizations. So stuff that was never really well understood is now coming into libraries that are actually accessible to the public from around the world. So it really enhances your interest in that. The other thing that has been fascinating to me is archaeology. And I've visited a number of sites that, when I first visited them, maybe a little over a decade ago, not a lot was known. I mean, here just outside of San Miguel de Allende, where I've spent a lot of time, there are some pyramids and ruins, but very complete pyramids and very restored pyramids. And they didn't know a lot about what these were and how they fit into the general sense of things. And now, over time, what they figured out at these pyramids that are in just outside of San Miguel are part of a chain of pyramids that reach up into Utah and go down into South America. And there's approximately 80 pyramid complexes, and they were like, the early day Costco, if you will. There were people that traded up and down these pyramids, and they would either grow food, or they would make crafts, or make staples, or just different things. And they would go, during the warm season, they'd go 2 or 3 pyramids north, and during the cool season, they'd go 2 or 3 pyramids south. And so there was all this trading going on, and that wasn't even known. So even if you've been to a place and you now go back there, it's just fascinating. I just watched a documentary last night on YouTube where this couple bought a house and they moved into it, and they knew it was an old house and they planned to restore it, which they did. But when they were ripping up the floor, they found a whole bunch of rooms underneath the floor that extended quite far out. They say it was a chamber with different work areas and assembly areas and that kind of thing that you could actually get 300 or 400 people into. So this massive thing, and they've dated it now back to 2,000 years ago. So every time you travel to a city, because archaeology is advancing so fast, there's just leaps and bounds of new information that's been discovered about these things. So taking something like that, taking a survey, on any number of things. We had one of our coaches that actually, did something I don't really recommend, but checked her email before she got out of bed in the morning, just grabbed her phone, and she had been invited to a job based on her sort of profile in the system, and it was to take a survey about a certain product. And so she accepted, she wrote a little proposal, accepted the job before she got out of bed. The buyer happened to be online, awarded her the job. She watched a little video, then she took a survey that I think was 5 questions, 10 questions, something very simple. And before she got out of bed, she completed that, and the buyer, because they were online, saw that she'd done the work and paid her right away. So I think she said she made about $45 just before she got out of bed on that survey. So it doesn't happen every time, but it certainly is a fun time to do that kind of stuff. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover today. Just think about having some fun with this. Bring your hobbies, bring your interests, bring random thoughts, throw random words into the search engines, throw the word hilarious in there, throw the word funny in there, throw the word comedy in there, and you'll see all kinds of interesting things that may catch your eye, might apply to your skill set, and might lead you into very interesting new directions as you work on these systems. So thanks so much. Always appreciate the love there and the thumbs up. We follow your questions throughout the week. So if you're watching this on the replay, which is where most people watch this, is on the replay, be sure and ask a question or share an experience, share a hobby you might have, share an interest you might have. And we'll look forward to seeing you on our Tuesday night call or seeing you on Freelance Friday next Friday. So have a great week freelancing. Take care.